Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Future Food. I am so excited to bring you today's episode, which is going to give you a behind-the-scenes look at what I've been experiencing in my executive leadership coaching practice. I have the great pleasure of working with some of the most visionary leaders who are transforming our food system, getting to really partner with them and help them to create their vision and turn it into a reality so that we are seeing the change that we want to be creating in our food system. And because of this, I get to walk alongside them in building the organizations that they believe really can shepherd change. And what I love so much about this is that it really gives me a bird's eye view to understanding what are the forces, the leadership forces that are shaping the future of food, and how are these executives showing up differently to create a different narrative to really shift our food system into something that is so incredibly powerful. I'm talking about founders, corporate executives, entrepreneurs, all kinds of leaders, even investors, really, and government officials who are thinking differently about how we can feed the world while stewarding the planet and really using food as a powerful technology for change. But before we dive in, I want to give a special thanks to Cronova for partnering with me to bring you this episode. And I'm curious, what are you doing this fall? If you're passionate about shaping the future of food, then mark your calendar for Spot on Food 2024, which is an incredible event that goes down in October in southern Sweden. At Spot on Food, you'll have the chance to connect with some of the boldest entrepreneurs pushing the boundaries of sustainable food and agriculture alongside executives, investors, researchers, and farmers from around the world. This event brings together the entire food system to explore what's next for our plates and our planet. If you're looking to connect with a vibrant community that's driving change in the food industry, this is it. To register and learn more about Spot on Food, you can check out the link in the show notes. And remember that the deadline to get your ticket is September 26. The good news is that you have access to an extra 10% off by using the code FUTUREFOOD at checkout. And I'll also put all of those details in the show notes for you. If you're looking to connect with the visionary leaders I'll be talking about in this episode, this is really the place to do it. Spot on Food 2024. And with that, let's go ahead and dive into it. So I first want to talk about why it's important that we even discuss what does it mean to be a leader working on the future of food, and how are we choosing to show up in how we lead and how we build organizations and what we stand for. When we look at creating change, it almost always starts from within. It starts with you. And as a leader, you're at the helm of an organization. And from that place, you have people who are looking up to you, meaning your employees and the stakeholders around you. But you also have people who are looking to you for solutions. So almost always when I start working with my clients, we have to begin with, what is your leadership style? Who are you? What do you stand for? And what is your vision for what's next? What is it that you want to create, not just for yourself, but in terms of the kind of organization and the kind of culture you want to build and the kind of solution you want to see in the world? Because ultimately your business, any organization is a vehicle for bringing a solution into the market. So there's a question of, what does the world look like once you have this solution? How has the world changed? What's true now? How do we interact with our food system? These are really big questions that are important to answer. And what I love about working with such a diverse array of visionary leaders is that there's differences in approach, but there's also some commonalities in how these leaders are choosing to show up. And it starts with an admission that the way we've been doing things so far has not really been serving us. And it's not the food system we want to continue to have. So how do we switch gears? How do we start running organizations and building organizations that really support where we want to go and that live the values we are working on bringing into truth? So the first trend that I've started to notice is that leaders working on the future of food understand that they're not leading tech companies. And inherently, the rules of the game are really different because not everything is based on zeros and ones and software. They have to be working on nature's timescale. So that's the first trend, is that really realizing that within your business, within your organization, one of your key stakeholders is nature, and you are co-creating with nature to create the future that you want to see. So what comes with this is an acknowledgement that these leaders are not just building organizations so that they can make lots and lots of money and return value for the stakeholders, but they're really building for generations to come. And they typically are taking a longer term view with a much more patient stance on what's required to drive change. One of the famous quotes we always hear within the food industry, if you go to a conference or event, someone almost always ends up on stage saying, an average farmer has 60 harvests to make their business work. So they have 60 opportunities to create a profitable business. And if you're running a company that is dealing with the food system, and I define food as everything that comes from the earth and goes back to it, you are dealing with nature's timescale in terms of how fast can we produce, how much can we produce, how do we work with the land to get the resources that we need, and make sure we're taking care of the land at the same time so that we can keep on using it. So once you step into this perspective of looking at how do I incorporate nature as a stakeholder in my organization, but how do I co-lead with nature? How do I operate with nature's timescale? That removes a sense of urgency, and it has you looking at the world through a very, very different lens. And it really shifts the long-term strategic thinking into one where it starts to be a lot more about legacy. What is the world that you want to be leaving behind? And how are your everyday actions informing that? So what I see amongst these leaders who are in touch with the way that the natural world works, and in many cases, they become a student of the natural world. They prioritize spending time out in nature. They look at what are the life's principles of how the world is governed and what do we know is these universal truths. And then they think about how do I apply that into the organization, but also how do I apply it in my own life to make sure that I avoid burnout. So it's a lot of stepping away from the sense of urgency and instant gratification to taking a long-term view, and also understanding that there is seasonality in business. Just like we have 4 seasons, winter, spring, summer, and fall, organizations in our own lives move through these very similar patterns. The next thing that I'm noticing, the next leadership trend, is that success is being redefined. For a very, very long time, there's been this idea that success, particularly if you are an entrepreneur or a founder, is defined by how much money did you raise, or where were you asked to speak, or how many times has the media written about you. And that's all wonderful. However, it's not truly measuring the success of the organization. Those are all things that speak to our egos and speak to vanity metrics versus real impact. So what I'm seeing amongst leaders in the agri-food space is that they're redefining and really reclaiming what success means and looks like to them. And for them, it's pretty simple. Success is product market fit. And it's a very thoughtful approach. So one, I see a lot of leaders putting their blinders on and realizing like, hey, it's really not that important for me to declare that I've raised $20 million. At the end of the day, that's still me having a boss, and it just means that we brought in capital. It doesn't mean that we've done anything successfully other than convince someone we're worth investing in, which is an accomplishment, but it doesn't mean that you've sold the product in the market and that you have customers. That really is the metric that they're looking at in terms of, is there a need in the market for this? It's also a very different approach to how we've seen a lot of different founders and the investors putting money into those companies look at how they approach a market. For a long time now, there's been this idea of we're going to conquer the market. We're going to spray and pray. We're going to put tons of money into the market, flood it with capital to acquire new customers and expand often at a loss, as opposed to taking an approach, which is what I'm seeing with the agri-food founders, that is a lot more organic and it's focused on sustainable growth. It's slower, fitting into that idea with the nature's timescale, and it's hyper focused on how do we make sure that there is product market fit here. So moving away from vanity metrics and really moving into real sales, impact on customers, and looking at what creates a sustainable, healthy business as opposed to going at that lightning speed. The next leadership trend is also really interesting to me. I see a lot of leaders so for me, when I think of the stereotype of a CEO, I almost always think of this person who is self-serving. It's about them. They know they're their leader. It's about their opinion. What they say goes. They make the executive decision, which is all true. Those are things that CEOs do. However, what I see shifting is that the leaders of these agri-food companies are thinking a lot more collaboratively. So they're going, hey. This is not about me. This is not about my ego. I couldn't care less about what actually happens to me. I'm here to create the impact. So I don't care if I'm CEO. That's not the most important thing. I care that the work gets done, the mission gets served, and that we're able to create whatever it is we've set out as an organization to build. So consequently, they're looking at how they build their organizational structures really differently, because they're looking at how do we create companies where people can be interchanged. So the org isn't built in this hierarchical way where there's one person at the top who's carrying the majority of it. They instead look at how can I set myself up to be replaced? How do I really create an organization where you're promoted so that you stay in your zone of genius and what you're amazing at versus being forced into a managerial role if that's not what your talent is? How do we look at collaborating more so that if one person is out, someone can step in and you don't have this gaping hole because nobody knew how to do that person's job or nobody knew where to find that knowledge? And then also really looking at how do we encourage diversity of thought? So this to me is a very fascinating trend because it really goes in a different grain than what we've seen. And it really, what I see happening when it's most successful is that there's a really strong foundation that the executive team has set. And whenever I'm working with clients, I always share that a company culture starts with the top, which is why it's so important for you as a leader to know what's your vision, but also what are your values, because your employees and the people around you are going to be, one, attracted to your shared value set, and that's going to motivate them and encourage them to work more and harder or to dedicate themselves to this mission. But to the same point, when you have a shared vision and shared values, it makes it a lot easier to delegate your decision making because you trust that someone's going to be acting in your interest as you would. So once you set your clear North Star of, well, this is what we want to create. We want to eliminate food waste. Let's just take that as an example. If I'm an employee, I can use that as a filter for all of my decision making. Okay, so if our vision is to eliminate food waste, what choice could I make that would maximize that outcome? If our value is transparency, how do I make a decision that honors being transparent so that we're building in line with that? So this takes a lot of burden off of the CEO and the leadership team because they're able to trust their other employees more, and it creates a more flat organization where everyone is able to operate kind of with that hive mind mentality, like we all know where we're going and what we're doing, so we can move faster together. And importantly, it shifts us away from solely looking at how do we fulfill the leader's desires, ego, opinions. I'm sure you've worked at an organization where the majority of decision making was not focused on creating impact, but focused on how do I make the CEO happy? How do I get a gold star? How do I get an A+? And at that point, you're just catering to them versus catering to the mission that you really want to serve. And this is where I see leaders really stepping up and going, hold on a minute. It's not about me. It's not about my ego. It's not about my employees working to make me happy. It's about us working towards this change that we want to create and see. So that leads us to trend number 4, which is a lot of leaders starting to really study and understand and play with embodying regenerative principles. This is also a shift that I've been going through personally over the last 2 to 3 years. I've taken a few different degrees in this space. So a lot of regenerative entrepreneurship, regenerative leadership, and just diving into what is a regenerative mindset. And there are so many theories out there that say that it starts with inner regeneration to lead to outer regeneration. And I'm seeing that trend happen across the board with the leaders I'm working with and people in the field who are super curious to learn more and are kind of hungry for a different way of thinking. So how I see that translating into organizations and to leadership principles is that the executives are taking an approach of saying, let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's not go ahead and pretend that we have all the answers or that we can invent our way out of this. Let's recognize that nature has been here for billions of years and has been innovating for billions of years, and we can take a lesson from that book. So when they go out to design product services, the organization starts by taking inspiration from nature, and then they use biomimicry. They follow their intuition. They focus on putting themselves in right relationship and harmony with themselves and the world. And this is also leading to a shift around, what does success look like? How do we measure success? So often that's focused on how much money is in the bank, how many material items do you have, but we ignore natural capital, the ability to be with the natural world, as well as relational capital, the quality of our relationships, as part of that definition of what wealth and success looks like. And I'll just speak personally that I was so caught up in this as well, of looking at, well, how much money did my business make? And everything I was doing was focused on, how do I just create more money? And I had to take a step back and be like, whoa, 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 whoa. Is that really what is the most important thing for me? Is that the change I want to be driving? Because by just looking at and measuring that as my metric of success, I'm ignoring the fact that I sleep 8 hours a night, or that I have time to make good, nourishing food that keeps me healthy, or that I have time to be with my friends and families whenever I want, whenever it matters. Same goes with exercise, that I have time to take care of myself. I have time to go slow. So what I had to do in my organization is start implementing different metrics that I track that show the balance of that life and really honor how that makes me feel wealthy. And it is such a huge deprogramming step from everything I was taught, everything I learned in business school. And then also becoming a student of the natural world and looking at, how can I be inspired by how nature does this? One of my favorite quotes that I recently heard that I'd love to pass on to you is that in nature, there's a right time for everything. So you wouldn't go out and plant the seeds in the middle of winter because the ground is frozen and they will not grow. You're going to wait for that time when you know it's right and it's budding, it's going. Same with, you wouldn't go out and harvest the fruit if the fruit hasn't yet grown on the vine. You know, it's small things. It makes a lot of sense. It makes sense practically. We've all interacted with this. However, I was not thinking the same in my organization of understanding, patience is key. It's not ready for this thing to happen yet. And I would spend a lot of energy pushing with nothing happening. So little things where we can start reframing and relooking at, how are we living our lives? How are we creating space for ourselves to regenerate, also as leaders, and then having that relay into our organizations and really looking at how we learn from nature's genius in order to create brilliant solutions and bring them into the market. So the fifth and the last trend that I'm seeing is one that I'm so excited about. And it's that people are embracing collaboration over competition. And I am seeing more and more leaders step up and say, I love competition. Competition is a good thing. Competition means that there is demand for this solution in the market. Competition means that I'm not in this alone. I have all these people working alongside me to make this idea, this thing that we're bringing to market, the reality. Because there's an inherent understanding that no one organization is going to fix everything. This is the jobs that we need to do revolve around shifting culture, changing the narrative, changing how we live. So that's a big job for any one company to take on. And at the same time, we know that monocultures fail. If we just rely on one thing for a solution, we don't build resilience. So we want a diverse range of players and solutions working towards achieving the same goal. It makes us stronger. It makes us better. So I love that I'm seeing more and more leaders teaming up with competitors, exploring collabs with uncommon partners to bring solutions to the market faster. And all of these relationships are based on this shared vision for the future, shared values, which bring everyone together in service of a higher goal, which is why it's so important to start with getting clear on what's my vision for the future, what are the values for how I operate and make decisions, so that you can dive deeper. And I talk about this extensively in my episode on personal due diligence, which is how I do business matchmaking. So when I'm putting together an investor with a great idea, whether that be a nonprofit or a startup or another innovative solution, it always starts with both sides doing the work of saying, what is the vision for the future we want to create? What are our values? What do we stand for? And then looking at how aligned are we? Because this is long-term work, as I talked about before. This is going to take time. And we want to be working with people that we love, who we jive with and we get along with. And it's totally okay to have diversity of thought. But at the end of the day, are we standing for the same thing? Are we fighting for the same world? Odds are yes. Sometimes we have to go through the differences to figure out what's that core that we all stand for. But that's really what I see as the game-changing effect, is shifting the leadership paradigm from one of competition and dominance and one wins all to that of collaboration and recognizing that we are stronger when we work together. And ultimately, we do share the same goal, which is to feed all of the beautiful people on our planet while also making sure that we maximize life and enable the environment to thrive. So I hope you enjoyed these 5 trends. I know that it gives me a lot of hope to be speaking with so many executives in our industry who are working hard to do better, to do differently, and to lead by example. Because not only are they bringing these innovative solutions into market, they're also thinking, how can I be a different kind of leader? And how can I build a different kind of organization that supports a different kind of world? So, a reminder that if you want to meet more visionary leaders just like this at a very cool conference that's coming up, I have said this many times, but I love conferences, then Spot on Food 2024 is happening in October. You get 10% off by using the code FUTUREFOOD, and I put that in the show notes for you. And if you're curious to learn more about what executive leadership coaching looks like, you can go ahead and send me a message. I'd love to set up a call with you and share more about how I work with leaders in my practice to really support them in bringing their vision for the future of our food system to life. And for all of us, doing change, making things happen, it can be lonely at the top. It can feel isolating. So it's really important to be surrounding yourself with people who get what you're talking about, who support you in making it happen, and can really be that sounding board for you as you move through the little challenges that come up in the day-to-day. Buckminster Fuller said that the best way to create a new system and to create change is by making the old system obsolete. And I love this quote because it was also the foundation of my master's in management of innovation and business development, of looking at how do we really innovate and how do we lead change. And that is about building an entirely new system. And that is no small task. You should not be doing it alone. And I am very much a pro of receiving support as a leader, getting the investment you need to continuously do the work, continuously show up, but also surrounding yourself with a support system of other change makers who agree with what you're doing, who support you, who want to be there for you, who get what's going on and can really lend an empathetic ear. So for more information on executive leadership coaching, please also follow the link in the show notes, and I will see you in the next episode.